The old junkyard sat at the edge of town like a graveyard for forgotten machines, rows upon rows of rusted metal bodies baking under the harsh sun, their glory days long behind them. Among the crumpled sedans, stripped pickup trucks, and weathered minivans, one car stood out from the rest, not because it was in better condition, but because of what it once was. Sitting low on flat tires, its black and white paint faded to a dull gray, covered in years of grime and rust, was a Dodge Charger. Not just any Charger, this was a police interceptor, a machine that once roared through city streets with sirens blazing and lights flashing, protecting the people of its city. Now it sat abandoned, forgotten, and dismissed. A price tag of $1,000 hung from its cracked windshield. Most people walked past it without a second glance. But one man stopped, crouched down beside it, ran his hand along the rusted quarter panel, and smiled. He saw not what it was, but what it could be again. He pulled out his wallet without hesitation and bought the broken police car that day, and what followed was one of the most remarkable restoration journeys ever witnessed in the world of classic American muscle. The very first step was getting the Charger out of the junkyard, which was a challenge in itself. All four tires were completely flat, two of the wheels were bent, and the suspension had collapsed on the driver's side, giving the car a painful, lopsided stance. A flatbed tow truck was called, and with careful maneuvering and a lot of patience, the old police car was loaded up and transported to the restoration garage. When it finally rolled off the truck and sat under the bright fluorescent lights of the workshop, the full extent of the damage became terrifyingly clear. The body was riddled with rust, particularly along the rocker panels, the floor pan, and the wheel arches. The hood had a deep crease running across it from what appeared to be a collision. The front bumper was cracked and hanging off at one end. Every single piece of glass, windshield, rear window, side windows, was either cracked, fogged, or completely missing. The interior was in catastrophic condition, with the seats torn to shreds, the dashboard cracked and faded, wiring exposed and hanging like dead vines, and the carpeting so soaked with moisture and rot that it crumbled when touched. The engine bay, once home to a thundering V8, was a mess of corroded parts, broken hoses, and seized components. The restoration began with a full teardown. Every panel, every piece of trim, every component that could be removed was carefully taken off and catalogued. The doors came off first, followed by the hood and trunk lid. The engine was lifted out using a hoist, carefully lowered onto an engine stand so it could be inspected and rebuilt separately. The interior was stripped completely bare, with every scrap of old carpet, foam, and broken plastic removed until nothing remained but raw, bare metal. What the teardown revealed was both discouraging and exciting. Discouraging because the damage was even more extensive than it first appeared, but exciting because the core structure of the car, the frame and the main body shell, was still solid. This Charger had good bones, and that meant everything. The metalwork came next, and it was the most labor-intensive part of the entire rebuild. A skilled metal fabricator spent weeks cutting out the rusted sections of the floor pan and welding in fresh steel. The rocker panels were completely replaced, new metal carefully shaped and fitted to match the original contours of the car. The wheel arches were patched and smoothed. The crease in the hood was pulled out using a combination of heat, hammering, and body filler, worked slowly and patiently until the surface was perfectly flat. Every weld was ground smooth, every imperfection worked out by hand. The entire body was then stripped down to bare metal using an angle grinder and sandpaper, revealing the true surface beneath the old paint and primer. Skim coats of body filler were applied to the entire car, blocks sanded repeatedly until the body lines were crisp and the surfaces were completely smooth. This process alone took several weeks of painstaking effort, but the result was a shell that looked as though it had just rolled off the assembly line in 1969. While the body was being prepared, the engine was being completely rebuilt on the engine stand. The block was bored and honed, new pistons and rings installed, the crankshaft polished and balanced, new bearings fitted throughout. The cylinder heads were taken to a machine shop, where they were resurfaced and fitted with new valve guides, valves, and springs. A new camshaft was selected to give the engine a more aggressive performance profile. The intake manifold was rebuilt, the carburetor overhauled, and a new ignition system fitted. Every gasket in the engine was replaced, every seal renewed, every bolt cleaned and torqued to specification. When the rebuilt engine was finally fired up on a test stand for the first time, it settled into a deep, healthy idle that made the floor of the workshop vibrate. It was the sound of something truly alive. The suspension was completely rebuilt with new components throughout, new control arms, new ball joints, new tie rod ends, new springs and shock absorbers. The brakes were upgraded to a modern disc setup on all four corners for improved stopping power. A rebuilt transmission was sourced and fitted to the freshly rebuilt engine. New driveshaft, new rear axle seals, new differential fluid, every mechanical system in the car was either rebuilt or replaced from scratch. Then came the paint. The car had been sprayed in a beautiful deep red, a color that suited the aggressive lines of the Charger perfectly, paying homage to its history while giving it a fresh identity far removed from its old police livery. The primer coats went on first, each one sanded smooth before the next was applied. Then the color coats, sprayed in a climate-controlled booth, the painter moving in long, even strokes, building up the finish layer by layer. Finally the clear coat went on, thick and glossy, and when it was buffed out to a mirror shine, the Charger looked absolutely breathtaking. The reassembly was a moment of joy after months of hard work. New glass was fitted all around. A completely custom interior was installed, new bucket seats trimmed in black leather, new carpet, a restored dashboard with working gauges, a modern stereo system hidden discreetly behind a period-correct fascia. The doors were hung back on their hinges and adjusted until they closed with a satisfying thunk. The chrome trim was polished and reinstalled. New wheels and tires were fitted, wider than stock and perfectly proportioned to fill the wheel arches. When the engine was finally lowered back into the engine bay and all the connections made, when the battery was connected and the key was turned for the very first time in that car after its complete transformation, the Charger erupted to life with a roar that shook the walls of the workshop. The exhaust note was deep, aggressive, and intoxicating, the unmistakable voice of an American 5.8 running perfectly. What had started as a $1,000 junkyard relic, a faded ghost of a police car that most people had written off as worthless scrap, had been reborn as one of the most stunning Dodge Chargers anyone in that garage had ever seen. It was a testament to skill, patience, dedication, and an unshakable belief that even the most forgotten and broken things can be brought back to life with enough care and hard work. This is the story of what happens when passion meets craftsmanship, when a man refuses to let a legend die in the dirt. If you love this story and want more incredible car restoration journeys, amazing automotive history, and the stories behind the world's most legendary machines, then make sure you like this video, share it with every car lover you know, and subscribe to CarPoint and History, because this is just the beginning.